TCG members. This is Midnight Fox. We're coming to you with this week's Competitive Edge podcast. This week we're going to be talking about reptiles, otherwise known as trouser snakes. And actually, to start out the podcast, Eddie Phoenix wanted to go over the story of Gaga Gigo, so I'm going to pass it on to him and let him start out our podcast with the story.
Thank you, Midnight Fox, for actually making the trouser snake joke. Anyway, the story of Gaga Gigo. In his younger days, he served Ira, the water charmer, as her familiar. During this time, he fought alongside her and many others. While in his younger days, he was nearly eaten by some monster plants while trying to get food, but was saved, presumably, by Ira. He eventually grows up into Gaga Gigo, which I'm thinking with that, he started as Gigabyte and then grew into that. And when Ira sacrifices her soul before being revived by the ribbon of her birth, Gaga Gigo possesses her. At some point, he leaves her and sets off on his path to darkness. He eventually comes upon a warrior of light. They both engage in a battle that results in Gaga Gigo getting dragged into another dimension through a dimensional prison that Freed creates. After being sent through Freed's dimensional fissure, Gaga Gigo finds himself trapped in another dimension, possibly Pandemonium or the Dark World. Forced to wander the area for some time, Gaga Gigo stumbles across what seems to be a boneyard, and would later use the technique he used to master the boneyard to teach the Goblin Attack Force how to ice skate. Trouble soon ensues, and he almost gets sacrificed on the Archfiend's altar for tribute. Luckily, he's rescued by the marauding captain and his soldiers. However, before they can escape, they are attacked by an Empachi who was defeated by the marauding captain. It soon came back empowered by the fiends to become Blazing Empachi. They battle it, and it is eventually defeated by Chopman in a desperate attempt to escape his Archfiend captors, leaving Empachi as charcoal. During the battle, the marauding captain saves Gaga Gigo by taking a direct blast launched by Blazing Empachi. This act deeply moves Gaga Gigo, bringing about a catharsis that inspires him to help his newfound friend. He then joins Marauding Captain in a war against the Invader of Darkness. During one battle, Gaga Gigo deflects a blast from the Invader of Darkness that is aimed at one of Marauding Captain's men, saving the man in the same fashion the Marauding Captain saved him with, and proving his redemption. Sometime after the battle, Gaga Gigo gains aid from Kozaki in hope of gaining the necessary power to defeat the Invader of Darkness. With the help of Kozaki, Gaga Gigo has his body reconstructed to become Giga Gaga Gigo. However, it turns out that Kozaki was working with the Archfiends to repair their Empachis, and the Archfiend cybernetics that are fitted onto him prove to corrupt his mind, reverting him back to his evil self. Kozaki then launches Giga Gaga Gigo with his compulsory evacuation device into a monster gate in the sky and returns him to his native dimension. As he is mindlessly wandering the dimension in search of opponents, Giga Gaga Gigo comes across a venom cobra and battles it to test his strength. Afterward, Giga Gaga Gigo stumbles across Freed and attempts to finish him off by launching an attack. Yet Freed proves to be the stronger warrior and deflects Giga Gaga Gigo's attack. Giga Gaga Gigo gets his attack redirected back at him and is soon defeated. Obsessed to continue gaining strength to defeat his rivals, Giga Gaga Gigo continues his rampage, transforms into Go Giga Gaga Gigo, and truly loses his soul to undying craving for power. Yet again, he engages Freed in a battle, but this time he was able to outpower him. When he was about to give him the finishing blow, the marauding captain appears to protect Freed. And instead of following his corrupted instincts, Go Giga Gaga Gigo understands marauding captain's actions and gives up on his quest for power. Thus, he finally became the strong warrior of justice he once set out to be, Giga Gaga Gigo the Risen.
You forgot about Gaga Gigo the Awakened! Yeah, we're crossbreeding Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh now. Ash came over and took a little trip through Yu-Gi-Oh land and took a gigabyte to Gagagigo the Awakened.
Yes, but also
Long story short.
some of the other cards that Gagagigo has appeared in is Triangle Power, Familiar Possessed Era, Stumbling, Two-Man Battle Cell, My Body as a Shield, Absolute End, Spirit Barrier, Dimensional Prison, DD Borderline, Level Conversion Lab, Alter for Tribute, Subsepartal Battle, and Ice Bond. Ice Bond. It looks German to me, but eh.
In other words, the trouser snake gets around.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Well, okay. Well, quite an interesting story to go through. A little bit of entertainment there. Gonna switch up our podcast this week, and being that reptiles are not a huge type within themselves, there may be about 3 decks that use them effectively, and probably the most effective of them being aliens. We got to switch up the podcast a little for reptiles. So me and Eddie are going to talk about a few reptiles that we think are overlooked, possibly helpful in the game or support, and we're going to bounce them off Ginzo. So with that, the fox will start. I'm going to start with my first one, and it was released in Photon Shockwave, and my 3 kind of roll together into a deck if you were looking at a reptile-based deck. And that is Light Serpent. He's 1200 attack, 800 defense, level 3. And when he's sent from the hand to the graveyard, he gets special summoned from the graveyard. Can't be used as synchro material, but he can be used as an easy XC summon and then dumped later on and become chaos food. So, I mean, just with the ability, I think he can be quite the useful card depending on what you play against. What's your thoughts on Light Serpent, Ginzo?
Well, I guess if you're going to try and apply it to Chaos, there's a lot of good things about it, just because, A, it's a level 3, so it's going to work well with Tour Guide. We'll say the level in general is going to work well because of Tour Guide and the rank 3 plays it's going to want to make for, like, Leviair. The thing I'm curious about with him, though, because, again, he's got a great level at level 3, going to rank 3 Ixies. He's got light attribute, so he kind of works, but would he miss his timing? That's the question. Okay, well, I'm seeing right here, you can activate the effect even when it is sent to the graveyard as a cost. So no, he doesn't miss his timing. So I guess it depends on your Chaos deck and what you're using to actually activate his effect, like Raigeki Break, Phoenix, Wing, Wind Blast. I guess the particulars there would matter.
So basically, he's a good card to have in there as a way to pay your cost and get a special summon out of it.
Yeah.
And then he's good Xyz material because we know right now rank 3s, rank 4s are the best ones out there as far as being easily summoned and having abusive powers. So, I mean, that, and then when you dump him as an Xyz unit, he's chaos food in a chaos deck. So, I think he's overlooked maybe later on down the road as people start to take more of a look at him. He might see a little more play, which kind of takes me into my second card, Kage Tokage. He's a level 4, and he's got 1100 attack, 1500 defense. Now what this guy does, he can't be normal summoned or set. When you normal summon a level 4 monster, you can special summon him from your hand. Again, he can't be used as synchro material monster, but then he's also there as a level 4 to go into a rank 4 Xyz monster, and he's the opposite of Light Serpent in the fact that he's a dark. So between those two cards right there, those two reptiles within themselves, you have chaos food. And both of them have a special summon ability. So in the deck built correctly, you could easily go into a 3 and a 4, depending on what you're playing, a rank 3 or rank 4 monster, just with those two monsters, and then you have chaos food. So, what are your thoughts on Kage Tokage, Genzo?
Well, I think my thoughts are kind of leaning towards the negative because, again, you say chaos, and if you think about chaos from where it originated, it was just the deck that gained advantage easily, and the cards the deck played were the utmost inefficiency. And that's like the first strike against this guy. Like, I'd say the Light Serpent makes more sense because his effect goes off when he used as a cost. So generally, where you would go in the minus for discarding a card, this guy kind of like levels the play out. But Kago Tokage, he's like a marauding captain to me. He's a broken idea, and not broken in the sense of wow, this is overpowered, but broken as in nah, I think I'll set that to the side. You know, because you summon a monster, normal summon him. There's your first neg right there. It's neg 1 out of your hand, and if you know Chaos wants to maintain advantage any way it can, and so it's like counterintuitive to the deck. But if you were trying to build a gimmick deck where it was reptiles and chaos, I don't see how this guy could hurt just because, you know, it's a target for offerings to the snake deity.
Here's where I'm going to blow your mind in my third pick. We're talking about he's a special summon from a normal summon. My third card is Alien Shock Trooper. 1900 attack and 800 defense, normal monster. So you normal summon your rabbit, you special summon Kage Tokage, banish your rabbit, and you have a Shockmaster or One-Eyed Skill Gainer or other monster that requires 3 level 4s in one turn. Because Rescue Rabbit is a level 4. So Kage Tokage plays right into that, and the fact that he's a level 4, your normal summon is your rabbit. And then you special summon 2 alien shock troopers, and running Light Serpent in there, you have a rabbit deck that can somewhat effectively run chaos as well within it.
And not only just that, if you want to run to where, if you want to include like the Dino engine, just because, I mean, hey, you've got just drop 2 dinosaurs, then gone.
Reptiles are the smaller dinos.
True.
So, I mean, when you actually take that into account, and, you know, like I said, I go into Alien Shock Trooper just for his high attack and the fact that he's searchable by rabbit. And when I look at the 3 cards, the Light Serpent, Kage Tokage, and Alien Shock Trooper in a rabbit chaos build, I think there's a possibility of an engine within it. And
so here,
complement that with your tour guide and tour bus, which is one of my favorite combos, and it could be an effective deck if played correctly.
well, the thing about it is when you're talking about chaos, again, like, I could see the merit in Light Serpent, and I definitely think there's something I want to talk about as far as Shockmaster or Shock Trooper. But Kago Kage, he's filling that Earth role, so Tour Guide's always going to be better, you know?
Kage Tokage is a dark.
Yeah, so is Tour Guide. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to choose, like, when you're when you're building the deck, you usually start off with like a 50 card, 60 card deck maybe, and then you start fine tuning your idea. Like there's no way he makes the cut over tour guide for a chaos deck. But I do like the idea of like running the reptile kind of engine, if you will, because you can summon rabbit, banish it, special summon the two shock troopers, overlay for a ring 4 Ixies. Soon as one's in the grave, then a light reptile tuner named Alien Ammonite becomes live. It's like the debris dragon for reptiles. And then just chaos alone, you open up Cataster, Librarian, Magical Android, and even, a synchro you'll talk about later, the Cosmic Fortress Golgar. So I kind of like it. I think Tour Guide, Alien Ammonite are better choices that still lend themselves to chaos over Kago Tokage.
He makes a good point. I give him that.
Yeah, I mean, my only thoughts on Kage Tokage, and the only reason I went over him was just within the rabbit build with the normal summon. But of course, it's like any other combo, it's getting both of those cards to your hand.
There's that too.
But I mean, if you had rabbit and Kage Tokage, it's an easy Shockmaster, it's an easy one-eyed skill gainer, what have you, that costs 3 level 4s.
I guess the thing that can help you sell your point is that every deck wants to have a generic first turn play that's solid. It stands up to a lot. And then, if possible, every deck wants a first turn play that's dynamic. So that can help you sell your point, because if you have Kago Tokage, if you have Rescue Rabbit, there's a dynamic play in Shockmaster.
I think the best sell that would go in that deck, and you would really have to run this just to get the combo into your hand, you're definitely going to have to run at least a couple of gold Sarks so that you can get the 2 cards in your hand at the same time, because more than likely you're going to have one or the other, but you're not going to have both. So it could be your out of left field play your opponent doesn't see coming.
Well, say I'm going to take up for your card for you here. I still think that drawing a Kago Tokage would be better than drawing a gold sarcophagus. I understand you want to use the Sarko to search Kago Tokage, but in the mid game where you're drawing into answers, not, solidifying a hand of advantage, you're drawing into answers. Gold sarcophagus does nothing for you. It's like a 2-turn death.
That's true, and most of the time you want to search out your like Blackluster Soldier Envoy or
Heavy
your
Storm.
Chaos Sorcerer over that,
Yeah.
and then you run into the problem that, like with Burial from a Different Dimension, Leviair, things like that, whatever you throw out there, your opponent can steal them, they can throw it back into your graveyard. So, for me, I was just trying to think of a 3-card engine that might be something of interest to look at. I mean, I think the engine within itself is slightly overlooked. It can be broken as far as your opponent being able to break the engine, but it's still a decent idea to look at, that if more reptile support comes down the road, it could become a viable play. So with that, with my 3 cards, Light Serpent, Kage Tokage, and Alien Shock Trooper, we're going to get Eddie's 3 overlooked reptiles.
Okay, well, I was going to save one of mine for the later on part, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it in with the other stuff because it's quote-unquote overlooked. I'm going to go start off with one of my personal favorites, Fight Lion. Fight Lion being a 2400 attack, 1000 defense, 6. Battle between this card and a defense possession card, whose defense is lower than the attack. Inflict the damage to your opponent. I like it because it's a piercer, and plus with it being a water monster, if you ran things like Legendary Ocean, you could hopefully drop it faster with some of the other cards. Another card I enjoy is Balloon Lizard. You put one counter on this card during each of your standby phases. When the card is destroyed, inflict damage to the controller of the card that destroyed it equal to the number of counters times 400. Pretty simple. Just let it get built up on your side of the field by playing Swords of Revealing Light, and then play Creature Swap. Give it to your opponent gives you a good monster, and then just hit it, and then it blows up in their face. Or life point damage. Also another card that I enjoy.
Actually, that would blow up in your face, because then you would be the guy destroying it.
Yeah, the creature swap would cause it to blow up in your face because it's the person who
destroyed it. Oh, duh.
You would give it to your opponent, and then they would just sit on it, waiting for you to destroy it.
I read it wrong. My apologies. Whoopsies. Guess that goes to show how much sleep Eddie's had in the past few days, or at least, he needs to go to bed.
It's alright, we got you.
Pepsi, what are you drinking, Eddie?
It's actually Italian wine. It's in my refrigerator, but a creature you could creature swap, though, for giving your opponent damage would be Granadora. Summon it, you gain 1,000. Creature swap, your opponent loses 2,000. After you hit it and kill it.
What's the drawback effect of him again?
You lose 2,000 damage when he's sent to the graveyard.
Oh, yeah.
So
like, they could just overlay into a rank 4 Ixies, like Maestroke, detach. Oh, does it have to be sent from the field? Let me see.
When this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard.
Oh, destroyed. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So as a disease unit, he would be fine.
Yeah.
But again,
what's your thoughts on his cards there, Genzo?
Balloon Lizard was kind of fun when he first come out, I remember him. And any kind of card like that offers an alternate win condition, I'll always spend time at the desk going, what can I do here? It's really nasty in theory. When it's in your head, you can imagine, all right, I stall here, it builds counters, and then if my opponent wants to win the game, he's got to get through this card. But a numerous amount of things can happen. They're going to get rid of it quick, take a little bit of damage, or they're just going to sit the game out just like you. So, I mean, it could be nasty, but the likelihood of your opponent allowing it, sure, I mean, like, you can work towards keeping it, but you still have to have them destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
More likely they're going to run into wanting to hit it with a smashing ground or fairly quickly.
Yeah. So that's why I said you sit on it for a little bit with a Wabaku or two, and it's just like, nah.
Hey, it could almost be like a better version of Gravity Bond, though. Like, if your opponent can't get it without activating the effect, they're not going to mess with it once the damage starts adding up. They're going to try and do something like mind control.
Yeah. And if you've got a counter to that, well, it's like, well, spooked.
And then Grenadora, I mean, he's nice. 1900 attacks, nothing to scoff at ever in this game, especially at level 4. But again, his effect is nice, but Konami builds in this easy way out. I can turn the tables back against you after you worked for this gimmick. So that's the only problem I've ever had with him.
Well, I guess that takes us into our next point, and think we all have our own thoughts on reptiles as support. First of all, I just want to, before I go into support within itself, uh, basically the most effective reptile deck, I would say, that's come along in the game really has been the aliens with the A counters, the ability to drain away attack points.
Worms.
Well, I'm going to let you cover worms. I'm just covering uh, aliens.
Oh, I thought you were doing a general overview before we started the section. My bad.
Well, I'm gonna cover just my couple. Pass it on to you guys. Like probably your top two cards that's going to be in your alien decks are going to be Gangyel. He's level 7 light monster. And basically, if you take one of your opponent's monsters, you can summon him with one tribute by using your opponent's monster. So that would be a deck that would effectively use creature swap and running it at 3. And we know the aliens have lower attacks, but those A counters really make the difference. As far as them having low attacks, it kind of counterbalances it. Once per turn, you can place an A counter with him on a monster on your opponent's side of the field. And there again lies in that it lowers their attack by 300. And he's a 2600 attack, 2000 defense. I mean, if you're going to run him and you want to tribute your own monsters, really, I wouldn't waste 2 tributes. In an alien deck, I would go creature, swap, and enemy controller heavy in that deck and take your opponent's monsters and abuse Gangyel. Especially with the rank 7 Xyz monsters that we're starting to get. I'm pretty sure more great support will come for them, so it's definitely one not to lose within your mind, lose in the game. And what really cemented aliens, I mean, aliens were decent with just Gangyel, but what really cemented them for, I think, almost a format was their synchro, Golgar, Cosmic Horror, Golgar, and you had to have Alien Ammonite and one or more non-tuner alien type monsters. Again, 2600 attack, 1800 defense. He's a level 3 or level 5 synchro light monster, and once per turn, select any number of spell or trap cards, return those cards to the owner's hand, and put new A counters among monsters on the field, equal to the number of cards returned. And once per turn, you can remove 2 A counters from anywhere on the field and destroy a card on that your opponent controls. So it's giving you some field control. Number one, that you can send back cards to hands. Then you get new A counters to distribute. And you can remove A counters to destroy cards. And he's got a pretty solid attack, pretty solid defense. The only problem that really comes from him is the fact that he has to be in a pure alien build. But, I mean, the only real thing that made aliens pop was the A counters. So, at 2600 attack, either him or Gangyel could really make a dent in your opponent's life points if you got enough A counters put on their field. And my last one doesn't go along with aliens. Kind of goes back and looks at another deck, Gladiator, Beast Secutor. And he's overlooked a lot in my eyes. He's not ran in enough Glad Beast decks. When he's special summoned by the effect of a Gladiator Beast, when he attacks or is attacked, you get to special summon 2 Glad Beast monsters from your deck. So that means you could easily go into a Gyzaris or Heraclinos with this guy, with Wabaku, or I mean, if you can get through with an empty field, and he's 400 attack, so they can't trap hole him, they can't bottomless him. The worst thing you're going to run into is Mirror Force and Dimensional Prison. But still, his ability to swap him out, or not swap him out, but summon 2 other monsters, if you really want to, it's an easy Heraclinos. That kind of covers my thoughts on decks. I don't want to go too deep into aliens because I never really got huge into playing them. I just know that when I played against them, they were quite annoying, and the biggest annoyances in that deck were the ones I mentioned, Gangyel and Gogar, as they were the real power cards within aliens. So with that, I'll pass it on to Eddie.
Daggone it, Dual Network is an ass. To be perfectly honest, we could pass it on to Genzo until I get my daggone Dual... Well, actually, I'll be actually right.
Okay, well, we'll let Genzo go first while you get all your stuff composed.
Well, what were you wanting to cover?
We're going over decks now.
Oh yeah, but which one is he going over?
I'm not going over any decks, but I'm going to throw in one card that would go into almost any reptile deck.
Well, you go ahead and take care of that.
If you're going to throw any card into a reptile deck, the first card that should be on your list is Evil Dragon Anata. This card cannot be normal summon or set. This card cannot be special summoned except by removing from play all your reptile monsters from your side of the field and graveyard. This card's attack and defense are each equal to the number of reptile monsters you removed times 600. During each of your end phases, destroy 1 card on the field. That's 1 card, any card, on the field. I don't know what the real drawback of this card is, except for just getting rid of all of your monsters and things from the graveyard.
The big
There's no real
drawback to it, I think, was the fact that, again, it's a purely reptile build. If you want to get the full capabilities of Evil Dragon Ananta.
Well, it's also dark, so it's chaos food, and it's level 8.
Well, you wouldn't have to have a completely tribal reptile build to run this guy. It's just he can only be summoned by banishing reptiles.
Yeah.
What I like about him, though, is say you're in the early game and you miss, like, just for instance, you're playing aliens. In my opinion, one of the better cards of that deck is Alien Grey. You know, it's like flip, draw a card, and it also supports the theme with the aid counter. So say you don't start something, which is kind of like probably one of your preferred first turn plays. You know, and so you're just like grinding out the open game, get maybe 1, 2 reptiles in the grave. This guy can still be summoned, granted, he won't be a game finisher, or he won't turn the tide on his attack alone. But you could just banish those 2 reptiles, and now you're forcing your opponent to respond to this guy, because this isn't like a generic, I have 1800, I have 1900 attack monster. This is a guy who's going to continuously, turn after turn, have the potential to pop cards on your opponent's field. Players don't like that. Players respond. This guy eats up Solemn Warning. If he's big enough, Bottomless Trap Hole. Again, because Torrential is a great opening card, this guy can eat up Torrential. You know, it allows you to have a play to kind of make fight for presence in the game early without a lot of investment. So, I mean, just that alone where you can play him, you know, soft, banishing 1 or 2, in-game, you can banish 8, 10, and then he becomes a real problem. That's what I do like about this card. This card is a good card to bring up, Eddie.
It's a good early game, and it could be a good late game card if you run 3 copies of it. So,
exactly.
you know. And plus, back during the time of the worms and when they were able to actively run their fusion, you were able to actually drop future fusion, yeah, this thing would just...
Yeah, that's another interesting point to bring up. You kind of open up your plays the same way a hero can open up a play. So, like, say your opponent summons Stratos, search Bubble Man, sets his hand, right? So now he's going to make Excalibur if you've already made an attempt to control the field, or he's going to play Blade Armor Ninja to put pressure. So you respond to that with your one set, you Solemn Warning, then he follows up Miracle Fusion. So, like, that was a good point. You could Future Fusion into the Worm Zero, and your opponent responds to that, fine. Follow it up, Evil Dragon Ananta. It's pretty nice.
One thing I will say that I do like about him is his level. And I believe most of the Heradic Xyz monsters are rank 8s. So
6.
he could be something to run in a Chaos Dragon deck if you're wanting to get out your level 8 Heretics. If
Well, you
could
still have to
slip
have
in
reptiles,
your,
though.
I would slip it in with like the Light Serpent. I really wouldn't go Kage to Kage, but in that kind of build, Light Serpents would be a good way to get him out onto the field and then get your other level 8 out there. Bam, boom. You got your overlays for your Hieratics.
It's like you're saying he could be like a continuation play.
You're going to have to repeat that.
So you can make Heliopolis the rank 8 guy. Oh, I said,
Like
so what you're saying, Ben, is that you could use this guy as a continuation.
Pretty much. I wouldn't say I'd use him as a beat stick or something for pure out destruction on your opponent's field as, like I said, from my point of view, unless you're running a highly reptile deck, you're not going to reach his full potential. I mean, 10 reptiles is 6,000 attack. But to get him at where most of your level 8s are going to be, that's going to really make a difference, you're going to have at least 5 to get him up to 3,000. I look at him more as an easy special summon for your rank 8 Xyz monsters. As a matter of fact, I would probably remove 2 Light Serpents to keep him under 1,500 so he can't be bottomless. That way you got a 1,200 monster out. And as long as you have the other level 8, it's bam, boom, he's there.
He's still quite intriguing, too. Like, even what you're saying there, that's another play for presence. You keep it under bottomless trap hole. His effect's still going to go off in the end phase. You're going to pop a card, possibly, if your opponent, doesn't respond to it another way. And then, say it gets to their turn, and they just try to make a basic summon Thunder King Ryo to punch over it, you have Offering of the Snake Deity. It's just like a multi-purpose tool. I've liked this guy, especially for worm decks.
If you want to get a hold of him, most of you are going to have to go back to Premium Pack 1.
Yes.
What else you got, Eddie?
Other than that, Earthbound Immortal's name I can't say. Nothing. So...
Kakaryu or Kukurashi, or whatever we were going to call him.
Yeah. When he's destroyed, he destroys everything else on the field, so it's just like, okay, free Black Rose Dragon.
The only thing that I think that has been a real limiter to your Earthbound Immortals is the fact that they require a field spell to be out.
And now that the Seal of Orichalcos is around, Only
Well,
great way
also, I mean, skill drain.
that too.
Yeah.
Because like, if you had to put a body on the field, you could put him on the field without the field spell if you had skill drain. But then you're not getting the full value of your investment, so.
Exactly. Like I said, I think when we look at Earthbound Immortals, I think that was probably the biggest drawback to trying to run any of them was the presence of a field spell card. I mean, I did like the one that ran with Wing Beasts because if you ran like a Harpy Wing hybrid, like Harpies and Black Wings, you could potentially pull that one off.
Alapiscu?
Yep. I
Or
personally
or whatever?
am a Harpy fan, and I'm kind of excited that I'm starting to get wind that we're going to be getting some new Harpy support. Hooray for the Fox. So, I just like the abusage of like Harpy's hunting ground. When you use your Cyber Harpy ladies and your Harpy queens, you got 6 Harpies to come out and blow up the field with 3 Call of the Haunts and Monster Reborn and all the other cards available like Hysteric Party to bring Harpies back out. It's a good way to really keep control of the spell and trap zone. And, I mean, with that, I could see a Silipiscu being viable in that deck, but most of them like Reptile, Kugaracha, whatever we want to call him. He's kind of I mean, field spells for reptiles, ugly. Field spells for beasts, ugly.
Hey, did make a good point, though. We do have Seal of Orichalcos, which has now become the generic kind of like play it where you want to.
And I actually ran against a deck that ran Silvori Calcos, and it was a Malefic skill drain deck.
Nice.
It's actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts, Ginzo? We're going to let you cover most of decks, because I'm pretty sure you got some pretty good ideas. I've looked through your YouTube page, and you come up with some pretty interesting concepts. Are you there?
Uh-oh. I think
Oh,
we lost
no. Yep, we lost him. Oh, no. He'll be back in a second. In the meantime, while we're waiting for Genzo to get back here and kind of go over his thoughts, just quick apologies. Reptiles, as we kind of covered as we went over this, are not a
Alright,
type.
Genzo's back.
He's back. Basically, they're not a type that has a whole lot going for them as far as pure decks, but so we kind of had to wing this week, but we'll be pretty excited next week is Thunder and the week after is Plants, so we're all excited for those. But I'm going to let Genzo, as I was saying before, we lost him for a second there, go over decks.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Since the weather's bad here, I'll try to not loom on the topics too long. But I guess since all the other stuff's been covered, like aliens and then the one glad beast, and not to mention a tie-in from a earlier video, the evil tiles. 2 of those that are pretty important to the deck are reptiles. So give them their propers in their podcast. But first, we'll talk about reptilians. It's kind of the weaker, semi-supported archetype that reptiles have to offer, and I like a lot of their cards. It's just for them to work well, they don't have the kind of utility they need to really use their effects. One of my favorite cards from the deck is the Tuner. He's a level 2 Reptilian Viper, 0 attack, 0 defense. When this card is normal summon, You can select and take control of one face-up monster with 0 attack your opponent controls. Now, that in itself is like a really neat idea because you have cards like Reptilian Naga, which is kind of like a Spirit Reaper because it can't be destroyed by battle, and whatever attacks it, its attack becomes 0. So you see that's kind of like a combo there. But just like Spirit Reaper, she has an inherent weakness, although hers is a lot worse because in the end phase of the turn she's face up, she has to go to attack position. So you can't even put her in defense to protect her. So it becomes like a double-edged sword. Your opponent can just load up the field and just attack everything into her if he has game.
I think the biggest usage with that, though, would be right now we have 3 cylinders, is running Dimension Walls and Magic Cylinders. Right there is 6 reflection cards. So you could abuse that, potentially.
You could, but I don't know. That just seems like it would kind of weaken the goal. I wish they just had a spell that was like a smash and ground for reptilians. Activate this spell card, target monsters, attack becomes 0. Like that would be so good. Because you have, Reptilian Gorgon. If this card attacks an opponent's monster after the damage calculation, the attack of the attack target becomes 0. Like, that's not good enough. He's only got 1400 attack. So basically, to get that effect, you have to, like, spend another card besides the summon of this guy. So you have to be like, Wabaku, then attack. And that's just, it's not worth it. But there are some cool cards that kind of play to their effect. So, like, you could Ojometry your opponent, and then Synchro Summon the Reptilian Synchro, which is Hydra. And when this card is Synchro Summoned, destroy all face-up monsters with 0 attack that your opponent controls, and draw 1 card for each monster. So there's kind of a dynamic play waiting to happen, but again, the likelihood of it happening is a lot different. Yeah. And I do like their Reptilian Gardener. It's one of the only monsters that's not dark. It's a water, but he has a big old butt with 2000 defense. And when this card you control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you add 1 reptilian monster to your hand. That's any of them, not a specific based on attack or level. It's any one you need, you know. And I guess the last reptilian monster I want to touch on, well, there's 2. But I'll just go ahead and get Vosky out the way, because that monster is the level 8 that can only be special summoned by tributing 2 face-up monsters with 0 attack from anywhere on the field. Like, I just want to mention it because it was pretty good in the plant days. You know, your opponent was always getting dandelion tokens, so you could eat up that false wall of defense. And then it had the effect of once per turn you can select and destroy 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. So that was pretty neat. And then the last monster I want to cover with them is Medusa. It's the level 6. You send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard and select 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. The attack of the selected monster becomes 0. So you see, there are cards that help get that 0 attack kind of effect. They're just not super efficient, so you kind of lack there. And a card that supports them that I want to talk about, other than Offering of the Snake Deity, was Alien Brain. It's kind of like the TG1 of the TGs. It's kind of like that, but in a different way. And you basically activate only when a reptile monster you control is destroyed by battle with an opponent's attacking monster and sent to the graveyard. You take control of that. So, like, your opponent's got a big boss guy, you have your reptilian monster gets attacked, take his power play and use it against them. But that's really it for the reptilians. They're undersupported, but can offer you a fun casual deck.
I love how they make them look so well on the anime series, though. I mean, if you remember, I think it was Carly was the one who played the reptilians, and they looked so cool when she played them. And they have all that great support there, and you, of course, you know, it's the Yugi play. You pretty much pull whatever you need into your hand. And it makes it seem like such a good deck, but then you go and you try to put it together.
Yeah, but this is from the same TV show that try to convince us that running a deck full of normal monsters, like 30 normal monsters and 10 spells and traps was the way to go.
Yep.
I remember that with the one kid who was running Heart of the Underdog. Yeah. Yeah.
Trust and believe in the heart of the cards.
But
Everything will be fine.
Hands down, it's the best reptile deck ever. It just is. They have Guru ability. They have the ability to bounce monsters. They have the ability to special summon themselves. They have Worm King, which is probably a more effective Dark Arm Dragon. Or maybe Scrap Dragon would be, you know, yeah, because you can special summon it off the trap and then pop a card. So there's a lot of good stuff for that, and because the cards are quite effective together, you could build a really solid deck and keep it really focused without a bunch of weak support and gimmicks, because 3 Carteros, 3 Zex, 3 Jagan, there's your deck right there. Then your player preference takes over and you say, I want to run 1 king or 2 king. Then player preference against comes in and you say, I want to run 2 to 3 offering. And then you have to run 3 of the W Nebula Meteorite. Sorry, I'm just learning to speak English. But the effect of the trap is change all face-down monsters on the field to face-up defense position. During the end phase of this turn, change all face-up light reptile monsters you control to face-down defense position, then draw 1 card for each. After that, you can special summon 1 level 7 or higher light reptile monster from your deck. So I mean, again, the boss monster in the deck is searchable from one of the best utilities the deck has to offer. All the monsters are light, so they can run Honest. You throw some Tour Guides, maybe Sangan, Spirit Reaper. Now you can throw in Soldier. There's a lot you can do with this deck, and it's still, I'd say, a pretty decent Tier 2 deck.
I like Worms, but probably out of all of them, and it's just for the simple draw engine that I like the most, was Lynx.
Yeah, but doesn't it have to be like face up, and or something weird like that?
Let me
I'm checking him right now.
double check him. Lynx.
Okay, yeah, no, yeah, flip. So that's a problem too, because he has to flip to activate. But during each end phase, if this card is face up, draw 1 card. So I mean, I've seen him play and played well, but it wasn't in Worm decks. It was in stall and meta decks.
Yeah.
He is
He's a good draw engine if you can keep him protected.
like Pac-Man decks, Deslakuta, stuff like that. He sings in those decks.
Well,
Oh, sorry. One last thing for the Worms. They're going to be getting a really awesome tool here pretty soon. And if I'm not mistaken, it's that 10 where some of the cards just got released. And I believe one of them is Photo Knight Palladius, where it takes 2 level 4 light monsters. Once per turn, you could detach 2 Ixie materials from this card to target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Its attack becomes 0. Also, its effects are negated. When this card you control is destroyed by your opponent's card, either by battle or card effect, and sent to your graveyard, you draw one card. So there's a lot of advantage just from that. And it's pretty good. I could see this being a 2 of in Worm extra deck.
Definitely. But I mean that's the future, and we know that Konami doesn't just let things die. I mean, that's kind of looking back at the way they re-released more support to water, and now we're getting talks. The wind structure's coming. They're going to lend more support to harpies. So, I mean, again, the Fox excited. Harpy support. One of my favorite type monsters in the entire game. They're harpies. So.
Oh, hold on a second, Ben. What's this? I'm getting a phone call from Konami. Oh, yes? Really? Oh, okay. That's great news. All right, talk to you later. So what they said is that if they're going to give you support for harpies, they're banning the field spell.
You're so funny. That's the best part of harpies. It's the hunting grounds.
That's an aggravating card.
I love that card. That was my answer when Glad Beasts were heavy. That was my answer to Glad Beasts. Because I'd run into a few players who'd be like, okay, when I'd summon, they'd be like, oh, I'm going to activate Glad Beast War Chariot to negate your destruction. I said, it's not coming from the Harpy, it's coming from the field spell. You can't do that. That was always a fun one. And I had a few of them quit because the spell and trap zone advantage that deck can create if built right.
We're off topic here, like way off topic.
Yeah, so we'll get back on topic. I mean, basically, I think we've covered most of it. You know, reptiles, they may not be huge, but they definitely offer support to different types of decks. There are some interesting reptiles out there, maybe some that are overlooked that as the meta evolves we'll start to see more play. But
we did cover a lot of them. You know, we could have talked about the Venoms, we could have talked about Screech, maybe even mentioned Oshalion. But as me and you talked before we started the podcast, we have to mention Sinister Serpent. Even though he's banned, we have to talk. Go.
Oh, Sinister Serpent. Yeah. You know what? I'm actually going to go to my archive on that where I talked about Sinister Serpent. And Sinister Serpent is actually a pretty broken reptile that unfortunately we're probably never going to be able to see come back just because of his ability. He's a water type, 300 attack, 250 defense. Oh gosh, little small monster. That's what you'd say. But his ability, during your standby phase, if a Sinister Serpent exists in your graveyard, you can return it to your hand. So it's always hand presence. It's there for costs. It's there to...
Just that fact alone, where he can turn discard a card cost into freebies. That's ridiculous enough.
Vortex, card destruction. He can be discard for hand destruction. Anything that you need to get rid of something out of your hand, and then he just comes back to your hand. Yes, he may have ugly little stats, but he can create some monster plays with the hand presence that he can create.
Yeah, ask Yata Garasu what he cares about stats.
Exactly.
Oh, and I was just thinking, like, this guy could be great for Mermail Atlanteans, right? Because they have to discard water monsters, right? Mermail Abyss Megalo.
Yep.
That would be. I mean, they get enough advantage off of cost. They don't need this guy.
Oh, we could love the days of seeing Sinister Serpent come back, but he
And just talking about him, you kind of have to mention like a pretty advanced rule from back when he was in the game, with Mirage of Nightmare. That's one of the most interesting card interactions you can come across in this game. So like, say you're being controlled, Mirage of Nightmare is put in decks not to draw cards. It's put into decks to counteract having your opponent control your hand early in the game. So you play this, right? And you have Sinister Serpent in the graveyard. Their standby phase, you draw up to 4 cards in your hand. Next turn, you draw for your turn. Into your standby phase, you have to resolve Mirage of Nightmare, discarding the same amount of cards you drew. So let's just say you had no hand, you drew 4 cards. You got Sinister in the graveyard. Well, here's where it gets interesting. Because we all know as turn player, you get to choose how your effects resolve, in what order. So you would get Sinister back to your hand, shuffle your hand. Now you tell your opponent, all right, I want to resolve Mirage of Nightmare. So you lay out your hand, he chooses a card. Let's just say we're super lucky and he chooses Sinister. Well, you would think, now finish resolving Mirage of Nightmare. But you now have Sinister Serpent in your graveyard, and you can choose to resolve his effect again. Add it back to your hand. Now you're discarding 1 less card than you were supposed to. And if he hits it, like I said, you had no cards, you drew 4. So he's got to draw or discard from your hand randomly 4 cards. Say he hits Sinister Serpent twice. Advantage much? Ridiculous.
Well, that and coupled with, of course, Mr. Jaden showed us in with Mirage of Nightmare, emergency provisions was a good way to waste it away too.
Standby MST or Imperial Order. If it was active on the field, you would choose how you resolve. So you would just resolve Mirage of Nightmare. All right, you no longer have to resolve because Imperial Order is negating its effect. But you've chosen to resolve Mirage Nightmare, so it resolves with no effect. Now you can send your Imperial Order to the graveyard without paying 700, and you have all the cards you drew, and you still have Mirage Nightmare, so you can overextend this turn.
Which would be the reason that we have our ban list, unfortunately.
Exactly.
But, I mean, I think that pretty well covers reptiles in a nutshell. We're really looking forward to our next 3 podcasts. They're going to be some of our more heavily supported types as we kind of run into our smaller types to get them out of the way. But definitely, I'm looking forward to next week. Thunder is one of my favorite types in the game. But just a couple quick things. If you haven't already got involved, still have the win a mat for Child's Play. The mat is an Order of Chaos mat signed by Little Karibo. If you don't know who Little Karibo is, he does Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series, and he does a lot of charity work. Just as a little side note, the White Rose also sent a Shark Drake Vice playmat to Little Karibo that will also be given away in a raffle. So for every $1 that you donate, you get a raffle entry. Whoever gets their name drawn gets a mat signed by Little Karibo. So if you're a Little Karibo fan, it's worth a few dollars to toss in. Every dollar gets you an entry. So, and you're helping a good cause. You're helping kids who are stuck in the hospital have a happy holiday. And we've kind of had a slump in Flash Tournament entrants. I'm going to reopen the poll. I really want to get members' opinions on what day is going to work best, because I want to switch it to a day where you all can get in there. I'd like to give away prizes, but we really need the numbers to be able to send them out. And the Flash tournaments do call for at least 4 players. So get in there, cast your votes, let me know what day is going to work best for you. They are interesting. There's always a twist. Eddie can tell you some of them are annoying, some of them are great. Just depends on my mood for the night. And last but not least, don't forget we do still have our race to 8,000. Currently, we have 7,440 members. When we get to 8,000, whoever's referred the most friends here is going to get an Exodia mat.
I believe I'm in the lead for that.
And when you're sending your friends, we try to make this even more user-friendly. At first, we just had something where they're supposed to send a PM. There is a shout box that you're going to see as soon as you register. Go in there, make a post, letting us know you're human so we can control the spam bot population. Just tell your friends, put their post in there, we'll get them onto the board. Don't just run away because you can't post right away. But we do our best to make sure that we have a spam-free board. So there are measures we have to take. So if you're sending your friends, tell them to make sure they look at that shout box and they put a post there. And one of the administrators will get in there and get them onto the site. And then from there on, they can post away. So unless anybody else has anything else to add. Anybody have anything else to add?
Nope.
Well,
No.
I'm going to end us out tonight by saying everybody enjoy the talk of trouser snakes.